I'm going to call us to order. First up, Jodine, have you taken attendance? Yes. All right, thank you. Next up, we have approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor of approving the agenda, please say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed? All right, agenda passes. Next up is approval of the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed? Consent agenda passes. All right, next up is comments. Do we have any citizen comments?
Yes. Lena Christensen. I don't know. I'm here for a government class. I really like the library. You guys are great. I don't know if you got told that enough, but book good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Solid.
Yeah.
A plus.
Any other comments?
No other comments.
Okay. Next up, we have the financial report with Eli.
Okay, so, we did not meet in August, so the year-end financials will be represented by the audit, because now, for the first time, we have our audited financials ready for the September board meeting. I cannot recall in my 20-plus years when we have had that ready. So, as a result, we did not include year-end financials in this, because we actually have the audited year-end financials for you. But we do have the July and the August financials. We're just gonna talk about the August financials. Those begin on page 40. So one thing that you can see with the chart here, our cash balance, we got more money than we normally do in the month of July. So we started out a little bit higher. That little graph, you can see that first little line there, started a little higher than normal, but then it hit right where it normally does. So it just happened that some of the transfers that came from the major tax collecting entities arrived in July instead of in August. So everything else is very normal. Total receipts, less refunds. So far, we've received $14.9 million. That's about 70% of budget. Very normal for this time of year. That'll continue creeping up as other payments come in. The unassigned fund balance, so this is the money that is not designated in our general fund or any other commitment, is about $8 million as of August 31st. So that funds about 4.5 months of library operations. That's a pretty good spot where you want to be, right in the sweet spot there. We will be asking in a future meeting to bring the surplus from last year, now based on the audited financial, to move that from the fund balance into the capital fund. So we'll talk about that at a future meeting. So revenues and expenditures. So far, our revenues are $3.7 million. That's 17% of budget after 16.6% of the year, running a little bit ahead. That's always nice to see. And year-to-date expenditures are $3.5 million. That's 15.9% after 16.6, so running a little bit under, which is where we always like those to be. If you turn to page 44, where we have the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes, what we're looking for here is, again, things that are ahead or behind of that 16.67%. If you look first up at the revenue side, the 20% having received the state penal fines, those come in big chunks. It really doesn't mean anything. Just means that we got one payment a little bit early. But we do see non-resident fees down at the bottom already at 20% of budget, so that's running ahead. And one other thing to point out here is that investment gains, we budgeted $50,000, and we've already received $106,000. Because we budget very conservatively, because if you don't receive a lot of interest, it's based on interest rates and all kinds of how the market does. If you don't receive it, it causes a problem on your revenue side, so we budget very conservatively, and then it's delightful if you get more. So we're in a good spot there. We've already gotten twice as much as we were expecting in interest income so far this year. If you look at personnel, those are all just a little bit under, which is exactly where we like those to be at this point in the year. And then looking down the lines here, the lines that are above 16%, communications a little bit early, we pay merit, which is for our internet bill. That comes in July, so we pay that for the whole year in July. Legal expense, we have a couple projects going, so that's a little bit ahead. Repairs and maintenance, we've got a couple things going. Again, that's kind of front-loaded. Utilities is one where Len and I are a little thinking that might need an adjustment when we get to the end of the year. It's already at 18%, so it's running a little hot. The plaza is coming in pretty much where we expected, but it is operating an archival physical plant. So as a result, even with the geothermal, it's gonna be about the same amount to operate as a branch, but it's 40,000 square feet instead of 15,000 square feet. So we're getting good return on the investment there. But it's still going, we may need to make an adjustment to utilities when we get to the end of the year. And capital outlay, that's really just about the things that we choose to buy and when. So that's all about as expected. Overall, again, just under 16%, so we're running just a little bit of ahead where we like to see it. And when we get to the audited financials, you'll see we finished last year just about $2.5 million under budget. So that's what we'll be asking to bring into the capital fund at the next meeting. And that's the financial report. Any questions?
All right,
Thank you very much.
thanks, Eli. Next up, we have committee reports. I will start with executive committee. I wrote it down. We had executive committee earlier today. We talked about some upcoming agreements that will be coming before the board in the next few months. We talked about the land acknowledgement, which we're going to have an update on that at the next meeting.
Oh,
I
it's on,
believe.
well, and
Oh, is-
it's on the agenda tonight.
It's on the agenda tonight as well. And then also sort of like annual policy update package that's going to be coming to a future meeting as well. And that is executive committee. Budget and finance with Aiden.
Short and sweet, we discussed the audit that we will be having on the agenda tonight. Very excited about. And that was it for our meeting.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
And next up, facilities committee with Scott.
Yep, and I'm bringing up my notes. So we met on August 27th. We had a few conversations. We got an update on the canopy that went up over our parking lot related to the construction project behind this building. So far, so good. There's been, some concrete dropped on some cars, but it seems to have been sorted out. I don't know if we've had any other incidents, but they're.
We did have a second incident, but so
Okay.
far, so good.
But
But it is, they are cosmetic, to be clear, cosmetic concrete droppings,
Yeah.
not structural ones.
Right. And Core is holding up their obligations, and they're paying for our parking spots across the street to replace the spots that they've displaced. So far, so good. Same thing with the plaza, so far, so good. We got an update on the archives. So far, humidity control and other things seem to be going well. I mean, there may be further updates, but at that point. And then the Friends reopening, I think, is still September 28th?
Yes.
Yes, so that, we got that update. And then for the big topic of discussion was this building. As we all know, we've had some bricks falling off the side, and we're in the midst of investigating that, and that is on the agenda tonight for further discussion. But we were sort of reviewing the proposals we got from various contractors that are advising us on both investigating what's actually going on structurally with the building and what we might need to do to repair that. And we went back and forth about the benefits of waiting until after winter versus before winter for opening more holes and, making sure that we get things patched up before winter. And to the extent we wanted to investigate what's actually going on, like how many holes we want to open up to really get around the perimeter to see if the problem we're seeing on the south face is present anywhere else along that same addition. So we'll hear more about that tonight, but that was the gist of that conversation. And then also, I think we talked briefly about the other thing that's on the agenda to discuss, this paper in front of us of estimates on sort of the various different maintenance expenses and other things we know that we're going to have to invest money in to kind of continue to maintain this building and keep it operational as we have the conversation about the future of what we want to do with this structure overall. So I look forward to that conversation later on the meeting tonight. So that's it from Facilities Committee.
All right, thanks so much, Scott. Next up, we have the library report with Eli.
Okay, here comes the library report. So for September 2024, it's been a very busy summer. As you all know, our stat of the month is summer game stats. So this year we had 14,672 summer game players. That's up 16% from 2023 and up almost 50% over 2022. So it's been a lot of growth over the past 2 years. We also saw huge growth in lawn and library codes. We had 47% more home codes just this year compared to the previous year. That's over 2,000 codes out in the community that people made, and that's in addition to all the codes that were just part of the game itself. We had a small increase in badges earned. There were actually a few fewer badges, but that was a strategic choice. But the big thing to actually see is the amount of points is up 35% over the previous year, which is great to see because not only is player number growing by double digits, but those players are more engaged, and that those players are then playing more and earning more points. Up 31% the number of prizes ordered. We ordered 4,700 library t-shirts this summer. That's up 957 over last summer. And that is just a terrific, it's a terrific marketing opportunity, really, that you see people with those shirts all over town. We had a story, someone mentioned to us that they were wearing their shirt with the name of the branches in Manhattan. And someone said, AADL. So that's what you want to see. That's like golden moment. And 2,480 SG Narwhal pantses were ordered. So that was a very popular item. We actually had to find an alternate supplier for Narwhal pants because we cornered the market on SG Narwhal pants. We had to find another vendor.
I was at a birthday party this weekend where there were 5 people wearing summer game t-shirts.
It's awesome.
Yeah,
It's delightful.
it was awesome.
So for upcoming events, we got a couple big ones coming up this month or next month. On Saturday, October 5th, it's A2CAF Small and Indie Press. It goes from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. You can see the poster here by Trung Lin Wen. He did a terrific job with this poster. And we also have an exhibit right now down in the basement of original work by Trung and Ebony Flowers and Tilly Walden, who's done some just incredible graphic novels, all 3 of them. So it's the original art down in the basement right now. We also have a new event, the Varta Storytelling Festival. This is for Southeast Asian storytelling cultures. And this is an event that was brought to us, and we're very excited to bring it to town for the first time. And that is Sunday, October 13th. And then we have the Ann Arbor Community Book Fest, now at AADL for its 2nd year, formerly known as the Carytown Book Fest. And that will be happening on Sunday, November 3rd from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. So some very book-related programs coming up over the next month or so. All right, and then speaking of book-related, the grand opening of the Friends Shop is this Saturday, September 28th at 265 Parkland Plaza from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And the Friends Shop will then be open every Saturday thereafter from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., inventory allowing. And donations are now being accepted Wednesdays through Sundays from 1 to 4 p.m. And there's also, this is new, an after-hours donation bin available 24 hours a day right outside the drop-off door at the plaza. So that's all coming together. We can't wait for everyone to come see the Friends' new bookshop. And congratulations to Rachel for all the work she's done to get that ready to open this weekend. All right. Here's a new ADL release. We have taken a step into the multiple library cards world. So we now have 9 designs for library card, the 5 branches, as well as some art from Kiltope, a Friends library card, some art from Slow Gin Fizz, Nicole Ray, and a photograph from our archives. So anyone who gets a new library card can get one of those cards. If you would like to replace your library card, you're welcome to do so, and they will replace it for you. You do have to change your library card number. For those of you who are hardcore and have memorized your library card number, you'll have to rememorize your new number after this. But those have been very popular, and it's great to work with so many local artists to pull those off. All right. Here's a new release from Fifth Avenue Studios. This is the Coolidge Wagner Anthology of Recorded Poetry. It celebrates and documents the art of poetry in recorded form. Created by multidisciplinary artist Chen An Yuan and features poets from the Ann Arbor area. And named after and dedicated to 2 of Chen An's high school teachers, Judy Coolidge and Tom Wagner of Bay High School in Ohio. It's a really exciting project. We are just on board for whatever Chen brings to us. He's just a really great force in the community and always doing something interesting, so it's great to partner with him. AADL in the community, something we wanted to let you know about. Our library tech and outreach staff member, Katie Munkovich, recently represented AADL and the Washtenaw Library for the Blind and Print Disabled nationally when she presented with a panel, the National Library Service for the Blind and Print Disabled National Conference in Washington, D.C. So she shared details about our operations, our assistive tech lab, and the tools collection, and you can see her there on the right in that photo at Visions, Visions 2023. Here's another thing we want to let you all know about. This is returned Palma, which is Proyecto Avance, Latino Mentoring Association, has returned to the downtown library for twice-a-week tutoring just this past couple weeks. Palma helps Latino students in the Ann Arbor area with their schoolwork and helps adults with basic English as a second language instruction. Since the pandemic, Palma had been using a hybrid model, but this year they're returning to in-person tutoring as much as possible. We'd love to see them back in the building. What's really great is that in many cases, the adults and the kids are getting parallel instruction at the same time. meeting them where they are. So it's a really great program, and great to have it here, because there's always something for the kids to do that's fun, in addition to all the places that the tutors from UMich can meet with their learners. Here's a great image from AADL and the Summer Festival with support from the University of Michigan Arts Initiative, the Friends of the Ann Arbor District Library, and the Ladies Library Association. Presented monuments, September 4th through 8th at Wheeler Park. And this is, you can see on the left, that's Joyce Hunter, and on the right is Bonnie Billups Jr., who's director of the Peace Neighborhood Center. Not pictured in this image are Martin Contreras and Keith Orr, who were also honored as part of this. But it was at the other side of the park, so it's hard to get it all in one image. MLive, CTN, Pulp, and many Ann Arbor residents shared photos and video of this moving installation over its 5 nights. This was a big success, really an incredible, awesome thing that I'm so glad we were able to make happen in partnership with the Summer Festival. And thank you to all of our partners for helping to fund that. All right, so now we got to catch up on Ann Arbor 200, and there have been a lot. We're not going to talk about all of them, but just to run through these. So number 94, AADL talks to Stephen Kane, retired award-winning investigative journalist for the Detroit News, Ypsilanti Press, and the Ann Arbor News. Number 95, dirt track daredevil Sammy Ross was born in Ann Arbor and raced cars for almost a decade before reaching the upper echelon in racing and competing in the Indy 500. Number 96 is There Went the Neighborhood, Old Neighborhood Walking Tour. So in the process of filming There Went the Neighborhood, we filmed this walking tour. Now we've released it as its own separate video. Just seeing Roger Brown, Cheryl Jewett O'Neill, and Omer Jean Dixon Winborn. The 3 of them take the camera around the neighborhood and point out spots of interest. And it's nice to see that all in one place. You've seen little segments of it in There Went the Neighborhood. Number 97, This Is the Town That Was, A Musical History of Ann Arbor. It's a musical that was put together for the sesquicentennial back in 1974. Number 98, Markham Pottery, The Simple Beauty of Ann Arbor Clay. Number 99, AADL talks to Michael Kanzioka, former Director of Artistic Programming at UMS. Number 100, this was one we had a lot of interest in. That's the Summer Game Map Annotated. So all of the 60-plus points of interest that were on the Summer Game art this year, all annotated. You can find out more about every one of them. Number 101, Francie Craker Goodridge and the Michigamis Olympic Legacy. Number 102, the LGBTQ+ Washtenaw Oral History Project interviewed Maggie Hostetler. Number 103, James Babcock, Ann Arbor's most eligible bachelor, and who could argue? Number 104 was the release of the Ann Arbor District Library's LGBTQ+ walking tour. This is now a brochure that you can get at all of our brochure points all over, and people have been taking that and looking around town. Documents historical locations important to the queer community, pulling from interviews with community members and podcasts. It includes favorite hangouts over the decades, including bars, bookstores, and sites of political advancement for LGBTQ+ rights. And congrats to our archives team for putting that together. Number 105, AADL talks to Steve Culver, publisher of the LGBTQ+ focused Michigan Outpost. Number 106, AADL talks to Diane Baker, songwriter and co-author of This Is the Town That Was. That was the musical from the sesquicentennial. Number 107, Toast of the Town, is a documentary about Angelos. This is basically the first half of a documentary project that we're working on. We also have footage of the last day at Angelos. So that will be combined with that to make a longer, closer to feature-length release that will be released toward the end of the year. And Stephen Vangelatos, customers and employees discuss what made Angelos important to them, while Steve remembers growing up in the restaurant and eventually becoming the owner. It's a terrific documentary, and really makes you miss Angelos for sure. Number 108 is the history of Treasure Mart. Number 109 is Bobby and the Old Professor, Adventures in Science, 1938 to 1949. This was a column that started in the Ann Arbor News, kind of like a Mr. Wizard sort of thing, ultimately ran in newspapers all across the U.S. Number 110, AADL talks to Peter Sparling, lecturer, poet, essayist, dancer, and filmmaker. He also made a documentary about Eulogy for the Outbar, which was released much earlier in the season. Number 111 is the There Went the Neighborhood interview archive. This includes the entirety of all 35 interviews, including 13 in-studio interviews, 15 audio-only interviews, and 7 interviews after the initial screening. So as a library and an archive, we don't just take the highlights and release them, we release the entirety of all the interviews. So that will be part of the public record in perpetuity. Number 112, AADL talks to Jay Cassidy, Hollywood film editor and former photographer for The Daily. Number 113, AADL talks to John Woodford, longtime journalist and editor of Michigan Today. Number 114 is a photo essay of Parker Mill County Park through the seasons, done by Aaron Helmrich, one of our librarians. Number 115 is Elzada or Seba Clover, pioneering botanist and the first woman to raft the Colorado River. Very interesting story. Number 116 is the story of the Rationals, Ann Arbor's Beatles, if they don't say so themselves. Number 117 is AADL Talks to Domenico Telemaco. He's the owner of NYPD and his family about their business here for many years. And number 118, the Ann Arbor yearbooks from 1885 to 2000, now online. We have made available digitized versions of every yearbook in our collection from 1885 to year 2000. This collection includes yearbooks from the Ann Arbor High School, its successor Pioneer High School, Huron, and Community. Number 119, AADL talks to Lisa Tuvison and Ken Pargoski, longtime Espresso Royale employees and now owners of the M36 coffee. Number 120 is the Andrea Fulton Concert Photos Collection, and number 121 is AADL Talks to Andrea Fulton, 1970s rock concert promoter, photographer, and psychedelic ranger. Number 122 is the story of Ann Arbor Gymkhana, 30 years of trampolines, spaceball, and fitness. Number 123 is the rise and fall of the Mozart Watch Company here in Ann Arbor. Number 124 is the Intercooperative Council of Ann Arbor, History and Stories of the Current Houses. That was put together by a retired librarian, Steve Jensen. Number 125, Summer Echoes. This one's really interesting. An original composition created from climatological data. And there's a video, it's about 3 or 4 minutes long, and it basically just uses the temperature average data over years to make a musical composition. It's very cool, I encourage you to check that out. Number 126 was the start of Mayor Week. We interviewed Lou Belcher, the 55th mayor of Ann Arbor. Number 127, we talked to Liz Brader, the 58th mayor of Ann Arbor. Number 128, we talked to Ingrid Sheldon, 59th mayor of Ann Arbor. Number 129, we talked to John Heftia, the 60th mayor of Ann Arbor. And number 130 was the release of our Ann Arbor mayor trading card set. Every single mayor from George Sedgwick in 1851 to Christopher Taylor. And all those trading cards colorized for your convenience. And then a very recent release, number 131, Local Movement, 5 Decades of Dance in Ann Arbor. This film by Amy McDonald and Terry Saris explores modern dance in Ann Arbor from the 1970s through today. And there's also a director's cut that's twice as long that you can watch as well, if you're interested in seeing that. And that's it, we're caught up, mostly. I think there was another one today. But we're getting there. It's going to be hot and heavy for the rest of the year. We should have a video documentary releasing almost every week between now and the end of the year. In December, we'll be having a Ann Arbor 200 Film Festival where we will screen all the documentaries on one day. It's probably going to take 5 or 6 or 7 hours to get through all of them. And ultimately, we'll put them all on a DVD so that people who aren't doing streaming will be able to watch them at home. And we also have had preliminary conversations with U of M Publishing about a massive interactive ebook and containing everything that went into this. Wow. So that would be a really huge project, and that's all yet to come. So this month's staff spotlight is Christina McElroy. She's a desk clerk here. She's worked here for 8 years at AADL. She started as a book pro in 2016 and was promoted to a desk clerk in 2021. What do you wish people you worked with knew about you? My dad owns a 72 Corvette Stingray, and I've been going to car shows with him for as long as I can remember. Of course, the Vet is my number one, but a 57 Chevy Bel Air is a close second. And there's an adorable picture of her as a little girl in Dad's Stingray. So our mention of the summer, just in case you missed this. In the final week of the summer game, AADL was made aware of a summer game proposal. U of M grad students Clay Conley and Jamie Lopez had been collecting codes and prizes all summer. During a walk in Burns Park, a special spot in their relationship, Jamie stumbled upon a summer game sign reading, "Will you marry me? Will you marry me?" Before she could process it, Clay was already down on one knee. And there was another code that said she said yes. So congratulations to Clay and Jamie. Delightful story. You just cannot believe the way that people bring the summer game into their hearts and into their lives in the community. So thank you and congratulations. Here's a mention of the month. This is a very exciting one for us. Our Pulp staff have the fingers on the pulse of the music scene in Washtenaw County, which includes new releases from the Ann Arbor hip-hop group Ghostbusters. We can't be 100% certain, but this is probably the first time the Ann Arbor District Library, referred to as the Ann Arbor Public Library, has been name-checked on a hip-hop track. And that track is called Dune Part 2. Check out the September 20th Pulp Friday 5 article and listen to Dune Part 2. Listener discretion is very much advised. But the name check is in the first 30 seconds. And you can't buy this kind of credibility in the community, let me just tell you. So that was terrific to have them be name checked. And now, is this perhaps the first time that a hip hop track has been mentioned in a library board meeting? And certainly not the last. Compliment of the month. Multiple patrons mentioned their love of the summer game during the skating event at Yost. Several families told us writer they had never skated before and were loving the chance to try it. We had about 600 people turn out for the summer game skate at Yost. It was a madhouse. Red Berenson was there, and it was too much for him. He left. because there were too many people on the ice. And it was just a terrific event. So much love and thanks from the community. Lots of people trying skating who have never been able to have it before. And it's just a great way for the library to use its resources to bring free access to something that otherwise you have to pay for. And that's what we do best. So that was a super great event, and we're likely to continue that as a late summer event going forward. Complaint of the month. Visiting grandmother with her grandkids wanted to express that it was ridiculous to pay for parking to use the library. She was really disappointed and thought it seemed unfair. And that was received at August 19th of 2024. So we're sorry, but there is very little free parking anywhere near the downtown library. We have lots of free parking at our branches and free parking on Sundays and after 6 p.m. So there you have it. That's our report for 2024, for September 2024. Any questions?
No, but shout out to Dune too, because I love that movie. And thanks for all the work you're doing. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just want to say that the numbers of the summer game are just so exciting and amazing, and I see it around town, the impact that it's having, and the joy that everybody has in it, and it's just, I just love it so much, and I love to see in the numbers how much it's grown. So.
It's terrific.
All right, thanks, Eli, although you are also up next. So next we have update on the land acknowledgement with Eli.
Okay, this is just a very quick update. Last time we talked about the land acknowledgement back just before summer, the board wanted to have some more feedback about the acknowledgement from a wider range of members of the Indigenous community. So in the past couple weeks, I've had meetings with 7 different members of various Indigenous nations, of various ages, various different occupations, to sort of capture a wider cross-section. Everyone was really positive about it as far as like both the process that we've approached it and also like the substance, but everyone also had edits, as you can imagine. So what our next step is I'm going to be integrating all of the edits from all the meetings that I had into a draft that we will take back to the staff committee that drafted it in the first place. And then they will finalize it, and we will bring it to you all for approval at the October meeting. So it'll be ready for use specifically for our Native American Heritage Month events in November, but also all the events we have all around the year. We just had an event 2 weeks ago, Sounds of the Ojibwe, that was really well attended and just a terrific event. So looking forward to more of that. And that's just to give you a quick update on that, so it will become before the board in the October meeting.
Great, thanks, Eli. Next up, we have an update on the exterior and structural system of the downtown library, also with Eli because Len is sick.
Yes, Len is sick. So, okay. Got a couple different things in front of you here. First, let's look at the document that starts Terracon Incorporated. So Terracon is the engineering firm that is looking at what we find in the holes, okay? What we have here is their quote for the engineering work and the engineering assessment to do an expanded assessment of what we found in the holes. Just to recap, we noticed back basically midsummer that a seam between the 3rd and 4th floor on the south side of the building was starting to buckle, that the bricks were starting to get punched out quite far, and to the point where it was starting to be a concern that they might fall off the building. Now, that is not a structural system. It is a structural facade. It holds itself up, but it's not holding the rest of the building up. You could peel all those bricks off the building still standing up. It just won't perform as well. What we found when we opened up that hole is that the building was not constructed as designed. There are metal additions to the structural system that were not called for in the original design, and there are missing components of the original structural design. We saw, one of the big things when you're building bricks and doing anything with mortar is to have reinforcement, right? There's lateral reinforcement connecting the bricks to each other. What we not see any of in the hole that we opened so far is tiebacks that connect the bricks back to the structure of the building, which is why we were in danger of them falling down, which is why the crew that was opening the building had to stop because they were worried about bricks starting to fall beyond their ability to control them, right? It's not where you want to be with your structural facade. So The other things that the initial discovery found is that the weatherproofing was not performing it was not installed as expected, and it was not performing as inspected. There was significant signs of water inside the structural system. There was much more corrosion on the actual structural steel beam elements than was expected. There were weep holes, which is where water gets out of the building, that were plugged and maybe have never been functional, right? So when water gets in the building, and when you have masonry, you always assume that water's going to get in there somehow. But then you have a system of flashing and weep holes to get the water out. The getting the water out part doesn't look like it's been functioning. So that what led to the structural steel that wasn't supposed to be there in the first place getting too wet, swelling, expanding, pushing the bricks out, right? Once we noticed that, we started looking at that seam and other seams, and all the way around the building, you see some displacement in varying degrees. Some places it's worse than others, but that seam between the third and the fourth floor, again, that's the newest edition of the building that opened in 1991. That seam appears to be failing all the way around the building, okay? So we got two things to move forward with here. One is fixing the hole that we currently have in the building that's covered up with plywood on the south side. So one of the major challenges here is that you cannot get that brick. The brick is very strange 80s square brick with this weird profile. We were able to find, I think, 12 pallets of it, not in the color that we have. But they are the only bricks in that profile that are left in the US. So we are going to obtain those 12 pallets. And they're, it's not like it's blue or something like that. It's like brown, right? It's like a darker terracotta. But when we put them in, you'll definitely see. But there's not any other option. There are no other bricks available to patch these holes. This Terracon quote here is the quote for the engineering work to assess what is found inside more holes, okay? This is not about the cost to open the holes. This is not about the cost to repair the holes. This is just about the engineering assessment. You put these three levels together, it's about $50,000. And basically, our assessment in consultation with the facilities committee and what Len and I have been talking about is that we want to do all three of these phases. We need to know everything about the status of this. So $50,000 will cover the engineering work. What we're expecting to spend is about another $50,000 for the demolition work and the repair work that comes after it. Now, this is not a resolution on tonight's meeting because this is going to be funded from the repairs and maintenance line that is already appropriated by you all. So at this point, we don't need a resolution because each one of these pieces is going to be below the approval threshold, so it doesn't necessarily require board action. If it comes up that something is above that approval threshold, we will bring it to you. However, this is not a project we would be taking out to bid because it's so specialized in terms of masonry failure engineering recommendations. It's not like there's 12 trades that do this in the community. It's really pretty much Terracon is the one. And then the other parts of the work are much smaller. So that's the basic next steps here is we're informing the board that we're intending to spend around 6 figures from the already appropriated repairs and maintenance budget to open up more holes in the downtown library and then patch those holes after we've seen what's in there. It's a major concern. Hopefully we will find some tiebacks in other holes because it's a concern if there are no tiebacks anywhere on that floor. In some photos you can see them, but in the places in some photos from the historical, you can see them, but when we opened them up, we didn't see them anywhere. So that's a concern. The flashing is a concern. The major thing is that it's just not supposed to have been so wet in there, right? And while this is not an immediate crisis for the inhabitability of the building, the best way of describing it is when you buy a used car and it's got 50,000 miles on the odometer and you flick it and it flips over to 450,000 miles. All of a sudden we're realizing that the downtown library has a lot less life left in it than we thought it might have. We did, and we'll talk about this in just a minute, but overall it's like we are at a point now where the decision needs to be made of if it is justifiable to invest any further public money in maintenance or upgrades of this building in a substantial way. There's a couple little cosmetic things we're going to do inside the building. We're going to do a small cosmetic redo to the youth department, which is overdue for one, but that's a small project. It won't really necessarily involve many walls moving or things like that. But The other document that you have here in front of you, it says the Downtown Branch Reserve Study Cost Review. This was first done in 2018 by O'Neill. What's important to understand about this is that this is a maintenance document. This is not upgrades, this is not replacements. This is just about keeping the building in standard condition. In 2017, when the study was originally done, if you look at the bottom line of the back page, looking about $11 million to keep the building just in its current state. We just had that reassessed to, it's not a change of scope, it's all the same things, it's just assessing how much these things cost now, 7 years later. And it's gone up 30% in those 7 years. So now we're up to almost $14 million of what it would cost just to keep the same building. When we did this study, we also asked our cost experts, well, what if we actually start doing upgrades? What if we try to replace our air handlers with more efficient air handlers? What if we try to replace all of the lighting in the building? What if we try to improve spaces in the building or try to solve some of the problems that, like one air handler serves parts of the first floor and parts of the fourth floor and then the parts of the first, all the sorts of problems we've been living with for a long time. And basically the estimate there is, well, if you want to do any actual upgrades to this building, you're looking at around $40 to $50 million, right? But then you still have the same building. And some of the challenges that we have, one of the biggest things that's the risk for us is the elevators. This is much too busy of a public building to have a single public elevator. When it needed to be replaced, when was that? 2016, 2015, somewhere in there? We had no elevator for 8 weeks. And every time anybody who had a mobility issue visited the library, we had to escort them through to the staff elevator. And when the staff elevator failed during that time, when it was down, we had to close because there was no way to get people up or down the building. It's ultimately a matter of capacity, and there's also, because of this 3 buildings, the 3 of them put together, there's a lot of liminal spaces in the building that are useless. Lots of hallways that don't go anywhere, lots of carpeted space that can't be used for anything. And those are things that's just, you can't address that. The structural system, that is what we've now found to have so much more wear on it than we thought it did. You can't replace the structural system of the building. You can't tear off all the brick, replace the steel pieces one by one because they're all needed to hold up the building. So we're really finding that what we have discovered here is that this building is reaching the end of its useful life. And it's not a crisis yet, but we can spend tens of millions of dollars and not really have a better space for it. So it really brings up the question of what we do next, which we're going to talk about some next steps here a little bit further on in the agenda. But all this to say, Len and I will be moving forward with around $100,000 of repair work to open up holes, assess the problem, and patch them back up, try to get that done before winter, which is pretty realistic. And we will bring things to you if any of that winds up being over my approval threshold of $42,000, or if any other individual projects need board attention. But it's already appropriated money, and just something we wanted to make sure you were all aware of.
You initially said 50,000, which I think is actually right.
50,000 for the engineering, 50,000 for the construction.
Gotcha.
So the 2 of them together, because this is just them telling us what they see. Then we also have to pay the construction guys to come make the holes and then repair them.
Got it.
Any questions?
Yeah, I just, are you concerned with the water about mold, and how are we protecting staff from any of that potential?
Fortunately, because it's basically a dual wall system, the risk is to the structural system. There's not been any penetrations of water through the wall into the public space, except for these little bump outs that we have right outside the elevator on the 4th floor. When it rains hard enough, those leak. Okay. But we're always inspecting those for mold. We've not seen any mold growth throughout the building. Something we test for regularly, that we look for. Sometimes when you get a ceiling tile, that gets wet from a leak, we will see some growth on there, and then we replace the ceiling tile. But we're not seeing any of the holes that we opened, not seeing any mold growth. Okay. It's mostly just, it gets corroded. It's the corrosion is the risk more than a health risk. Thank you for asking that question.
Is there going to be any engineering work to determine how to patch the holes? Do we need drawings or things like that? Is that included with?
That is one thing we have not yet received, and that's part of Terracon's work scope, is that they will give us construction drawings of how it should be replaced to try to get it closer to building code.
Right.
Right? You can't really fix all the problems, but they will recommend you should do these things when
Okay.
you're patching the holes to try to fix the tiebacks. You can add tiebacks, right, for the bricks that you're replacing.
Yep.
The issue is it doesn't necessarily make economic sense for the bricks that aren't falling off to remove them and then replace them with tiebacks.
Yep.
Did that answer your question?
Yep.
Any other questions? Yes.
I just have a comment that I just want to say that, of course, we need to spend a certain amount of money to figure out what's going on and to make it safe. But I just want it on the record to say, like, I really want us to minimize the amount of money that we're spending. And if the building has to look really ugly because we put up netting around it, but it saves us hundreds of thousands of dollars that we are spending on a failing building, I am all for that.
Yes, we are well into sunk cost fallacy territory on
Yeah,
this.
seconded, though, for real.
Yeah, there's been pretty significant discussion around this topic in facilities committee meetings and prior board meetings. And I will note that it came up in facilities committee multiple times that aesthetic appeal is not a priority or a value at this point as compared to cost savings.
I think as long as we also prioritize like the mental health of like folks working in the building though, because we don't want like, I think we have to balance that. Like, I just don't want people to be like, oh, I'm like working in a construction zone forever, you
Yes,
know? Like, I guess that's my only flag on that.
And, you know, all this changes very quickly if we start seeing any signs of buildings shifting or settling, right? Which we have not seen at all, even with the construction happening next door. But if that starts happening, that changes the calculus very quickly. Any other comments or feedback on this?
I'm personally really supportive of moving all this work forward. I think we've interrogated it multiple ways of, is there a way to make this cheaper? Could we phase it differently? Could we amend the scope of work? Could we use different materials? And I feel really confident that the plan that's being put forward is the right one and is necessary to really do a good job of assessing safety and having the information we need to make informed decisions about the life expectancy of the building.
Okay,
All right,
thank you
thanks.
very much.
Thanks, Eli. Next up, we're moving into new business, and we have the auditor's report with Daniel Beard from Yo and Yo.
All right. You guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Good. All right. I'm Daniel Beard. I'm the manager of the audit. I've been working on the audit for the last 5 years that we've been on the contract. We're going to go right here to why are we getting an audit? Well, the first and easy answer is you're required to by the state. But the purpose of an audit is to bring value to the financial statements, to bring assurance to it for the users such as yourselves, the board and the citizens to make decisions and know what's truly going on with the financials of the library. What we brought to the audit report was an unmodified opinion. That's the highest level of assurance that our profession can bring to any audit. So if we were giving you a grade on your audit, that would be your A+. So that's what you're looking to get. Management's responsibility is the financial statements. So management is responsible for the financial statements. We're just giving an opinion on the financial statements, that they are reasonably stated, and then we're giving an opinion on those statements. Management is also responsible for the design, implementation, and maintenance of internal controls. Those are very crucial in order to detect and correct fraud or misstatement in the financial statements. And then again, our responsibility is to obtain reasonable assurance, not absolute assurance, and render our opinion on the financial statements. Another component of the audit is we're obviously doing tests, we're looking at internal controls. We need to identify and assess risk of material misstatement. Everybody says, oh my gosh, we have a risk of material misstatement. All audits have a risk of material misstatement. We just have to identify the key areas where there is a risk of material misstatement and do extended procedures in those areas to bring reasonable assurance to the audit report. And then finally, we have to evaluate the policies, estimates, and overall presentation of the financial statements to make sure it's in accordance with GAAP and that it's free from management bias. So here's the balance sheet. So the balance sheet is a snapshot of the financials of the library at a point in time. This would be June 30, 2024. I'll just touch on a few key numbers. I know Eli went through his very thorough financial statement, financial progress report. Your two key items right there is in the general fund. We're only going to talk about the general fund because that's the lifeline of the organization. You have about $8.9 million in cash in investments, which is the majority of your assets right there. That's up 8% from this time in the previous year, and it makes up 93% of the total assets of the organization. So you guys are very liquid. You know, those assets are readily available for you guys to make decisions such as what you were just talking about. When we look at the fund balance, I know Eli touched on it. It's coming in at the unassigned portion of just over 8 million right there. That's basically break even from the previous year. It's a minimal increase from the previous year, so that means that your revenues and your expenses pretty much offset each other over the course of the year. We go to the next statement. This is basically your income statement if you're a business person. It's your statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. So this is a snapshot of the organization it's an accumulation over a period of time. The biggest items that you have on here are property taxes. Property taxes are the lifeline of your revenues for the library. Property taxes are up about 1.3 million year from last year, I'm sorry, which is about a 7% increase. Which is great. Obviously, home values are going up everywhere, especially in Ann Arbor, and that's what's driving the revenues for the library. When we also look at this, we're looking at the total expenditures that you have right there. You had just over 18 million. Well, you had $18.9 million in expenditures, so that's an increase of $1.6 million from the previous year. That's a 9% increase. So as your revenues are obviously increasing, the expenditures are increasing at kind of like a steady rate. And when we get into the charts, we can touch on that a little bit. I also want to touch on the personnel costs, which again Eli touched on in his presentation. That makes up about 66% of the total expenditures of the organization, and that's up about 12% from the previous year. So right here, this is the chart. If you're looking at your revenues and your expenditures and your fund balance, if you're kind of like an investment activity, revenues are increasing with expenses. Fund balance remains healthy. Your fund balance again is about 39% of annual expenditures, which is above our recommended 15 to 20%, which means that the library is very healthy and it's in a very good position. This graph right here looks kind of lopsided because property taxes are so much of the revenues for the library, and that other activity is really minimal. Your property taxes, again, are 96% of the total revenue, and as you can see, they're kind of trickling up there, just over $20 million in that graph right there. Expenditures, again, just very similar. Your property taxes are your revenues. Your expenditures are primarily your salary and personnel expenses. Your salary and personnel expenses on the far left over there are trending up. Again, they're up 12% from the previous year. Everything else is minimal, pretty steady. That other activity over there is basically differences in capital outlay purchases. It's just the way that GASB makes you record them all in the same period, so it kind of looks a little lopsided over in that area. And then finally, one of the things that we're required to report to you is our governance letter. It's a required communication to the board and management. What we go through on the governance letter is significant estimates. The significant estimates of the organization are capital assets. You know, those lives can be manipulated for management bias. Right-to-use assets. Those right-to-use assets would be such as the Westgate lease that you have. Subscription liabilities, that would be some of those subscription and IT arrangements that you have. You have some net pension liabilities and some net OPEB liabilities that still exist from personnel that were covered under the MIPSers plan, and that will go away as those people come off the payroll. So eventually that liability will come down to zero on its own. And again, to touch on those risk of material misstatement that I touched on, there was two that we identified: management override of control. Management override of control is on every engagement. We do additional procedures to make sure that management is not purposely overriding internal controls for their betterment. And then also revenue recognition. Revenue recognition is an easy way to manipulate the financial statements, basically timing differences or overstating revenues to make the financial statements look better than they really are. Corrected and uncorrected misstatements. We did have, I think, one audit adjustment, but it was not material in nature. I'll touch on it at the very bottom right there. And then accounting standards. There's an accounting standard coming up. GASB has actually slowed down on accounting standards recently, which is, thank God, they're going crazy there, keeping us busy, keeping our clients busy. But there is a new compensated absence unified approach that comes out. It's GASB 101. I presented it at the MICPA, so there's a PowerPoint out there. There's a white paper. It's actually very easy to implement. It's actually going to make tracking compensated absences a little bit easier. I will say your compensated absence liabilities will probably be grossed up because of it, because they're going to include some of those fringe expenses in the compensated absence liability calculation. Look into that for your next audit, which would be June 30, 2025. And then there's some informational items that I have to report to you guys, which would be disagreements with management and difficulties in dealing with management. We had none, so thank you there. And then finally, matters for management's consideration, year-end audit adjustments. There was just a payroll accrual item that there was an audit adjustment for that, and Cindy's well aware of that, but bring that to your attention. And other than that, I just want to say thank you to Eli, Cindy, and the library team. It was a great audit. Like Eli said, this is the first time we've been presenting in September.
Yeah, usually it's November.
Well, I've presented to you dressed up as Willy Wonka before.
That's right.
So then, is there any questions that the board has for us?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you very much, Dan.
Of course.
So this will be the last year that we're using Yo and Yo. We typically have cycled it up and chosen different auditors. And so when we renewed for 2 more years with Yo and Yo, we knew that this would be after. So we will be issuing an RFP around the end of the year to find new auditing firm for the next several years. So it's just a good practice for public entities to mix it up. And even though we've had great experience with Yo and Yo, recommend them highly.
Great.
You know, honestly, we decided to go with them for 2 more years because new director,
Yes.
new auditing software, or new financial software and all that, and we'd had such a good experience with them. We wanted them to keep us in good shape, and now we're ready to move
makes
on.
sense.
Great.
That's right.
All right, so now we have a resolution to accept the 2023-2024 financial audit. So this is an item of action. I will read the resolution. The board resolves as follows. 1, to accept the 2023-2024 financial audit prepared by Yo and Yo CPAs. 2, that all resolutions and parts of resolutions that conflict with the provisions of this resolution are rescinded. Can I get a motion for this resolution?
So moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion?
It's great.
Audit. It's great.
Happy to see it clean, early.
Go.
Yeah, I know last year there was some
Yeah.
some pain points with the new financial system, and it
Yeah.
seems like all of that is smoothed out now, so that's great.
Yes, although we're moving again. We're buying another new financial system because this one is just, there were some bumps that we really didn't need to have. And this, it's mostly about the support that the company provides. So we're going to be moving to another system.
Great. All right, thanks. So in that case, all those in favor of approving the resolution, please say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed? Motion passes. All right, we have accepted the audit. Thanks, Eli. Next up, we have another resolution to direct staff to pursue rezoning of the downtown library. I'm going to read this resolution. The board resolves as follows. 1, to direct staff to pursue the rezoning of the parcels comprising the downtown library site to D1. 2, that all resolutions and parts of resolutions that conflict with the provisions of this resolution are rescinded. Can I get a motion for this
So
resolution?
moved.
Second.
Seconded.
Scott really wanted in on that one. All right. Discussion, Eli.
So let me set the stage on this just a little bit. So back in 2018, we worked with some consultants to examine the feasibility of a mixed-use redevelopment of the downtown library. The goal was to explore if it was feasible to redevelop the site with a new library on the first few floors, and then multiple stories of housing above it to be operated by a development partner, that then the proceeds from them would be used to pay off the bond to build the new library. The goal being to develop a new library and new housing without any additional revenue, without any additional tax revenue from the taxpayers, to instead use the value of the land and the need of the community for that additional housing to basically leverage that to pay off the bond, to service the bonds. And what we found in 2018 is that it was feasible. It was close, but it was feasible. And that was something that gave us a lot of interest. At that time then, we decided that that was not the right moment to move forward with it, and we set the project aside. But one of the things that emerged from that project was that any sort of mixed-use development that involved private partners on the library's parcel would require the parcels to be zoned differently. The site is currently zoned PL, which is public land, which has very few restrictions or rules about it, other than it can only be used for public use. This parcel is surrounded basically on all sides by D1 zoned land, or at least on this side. It's D1 across Fifth. It's the new project behind us is D1. The library lot was going to be in a D1 zone. So it's like we're right in the middle of the densest part of the town. So the one thing that came up is that that could be a stumbling block for a potential project if you go into it without the zoning already settled out. So we've had some preliminary conversations with planning just to sort of see, because normally when you're seeking rezoning, you have to bring a site plan, you have to bring a project, right? But we don't have a project. What we'd like to do is kind of preemptively have the site designated as a denser parcel to open the door to future site plan, and any site plan would go before planning anyway, right? So the opportunity has presented itself here as we're looking at what are we going to do with this site. We have to do something. We've reached the end of the building's useful life, and it's time to look at what our options are. And some of those options go through a rezoned site. There's no reason if it's rezoned that we can't still just be just a downtown library on it as well. That doesn't preclude that, right? So this is an opportunity where we can go to planning, ask for a waiver of the site plan requirement, which planning has signaled is in the realm of possibility, and ask for the parcels. There's 3 parcels that make up the downtown library. There's the large one that most of the building stands on in the parking lot, then is 2 smaller parcels. Ask to have those 3 parcels zoned as D1 so that when we decide to move forward with some sort of redevelopment, that's already done. That's already behind us. And it seems like it's a good opportunity to do so. So I think kind of summed it up. Any questions or feedback or discussion?
Let's go, I love it.
I mean, I think we just heard about why it's a good time to do
Yeah.
this now.
Yeah, I mean, worst case, we just have it and we decide to do something else, but I feel like it's the right thing to just get the ball rolling anyways, even just see where planning's at on that.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's worth having the conversation. I don't see why not.
And we did do some polling not long after the feasibility study about the concept of a mixed-use, multiple housing types development. And we found very strong support in the community for housing above the library. I mean, who doesn't want to live above the library?
Yeah.
So it's a very strong support for it, provided it was a mix of uses, a mix of housing types, and provided that mix of housing types did not include student housing. So those sort of what we found in our polling at that point, is that the community is very supportive of it if it's got something for everyone and isn't student housing, something for almost everyone.
I think fundamentally our role as the board is one to, of course, have this fiduciary management, which we cannot do effectively, right, if we have a space that is functioning poorly and not well suited to our needs, but also listen to our constituents, and our constituents, again, overwhelmingly want to see this space used in that way. So I think this is helping us do that, best served in both sort of realms. So I'm very excited.
Yeah, I mean, I was eager to
Make that motion.
to make the motion here.
You get the next one, Scott.
Yeah, and I think Eli, you laid out the case perfectly. This doesn't preclude anything. It just opens up more possibilities. And one of the things you know, we've, like, around town, we've learned from development projects is like the entitlement process, which is the process of getting a parcel zoned for whatever you, the thing is you want to build, it takes time and it has a risk associated with it. And so if we're going out there to talk to potential partners, if we've already cleared that hurdle, that shortens the timeline and reduces the risk, which ultimately opens up the range of options we have in a way that if that wasn't the case, we may not be able to make the financing work or attract a wider range of partners to give us a better set of options to choose from. And I'll also just say, like, the way I think about this is like we have this building and we have all of the air above this building and it belongs to all of us. And there's a lot of value in the space above that we don't and can't really use, but the community could put to good use in partnership with somebody. So using that resource in order to fix this very, like, soon to be critical problem that this building that we cannot go forward with forever makes a lot of sense because, you know, it reduces the pressure we're putting on the community to pay for the replacement of this building, and we'll get something better, and we'll be, so it feels like it's a very win-win-win scenario, which is why I'm so excited about us really seriously moving forward in this direction. So yeah, I'm very enthusiastically supportive of this, and I hope it goes smoothly and we can figure out our next step from here.
And I think that in all the conversations that we've had leading up to this point, in no point have we talked about selling this property or doing some of those sorts of deals that some libraries do, where you sell the property, then you lease back your library from a developer. I don't think there's any appetite for that on the board, on the staff, in the community. We're looking for a library that stands on on land that is publicly owned. And that is, this change does not change that at all. We're not looking to sell the lot. This is where we want to be, on this corner, right across from transit, right in the middle of downtown. And this just puts us in a position of being able to provide a great new amenity for the community without a new bond that the community would have to pay for.
Well, and even though we're not in crisis with this building, I do feel a sense of urgency to move this forward, to get the wheels turning, because again, it's a responsible financial stewardship. I don't want to spend any more money than we have to waiting for rezoning, waiting to break ground. If this can save us 6 months to a year in the long-term planning, that would be huge.
Yeah, I mean, the steel isn't going to get less corroded, and these prices aren't going to go down.
No.
You know, so time is of the essence.
All right. All those in favor of this resolution, please say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed? All right, motion passes. Eli, go get
All
us
right.
that rezoning.
We'll go do that.
Thank you.
Please
All
and
right.
thank you.
Next up, we have any more citizens' comments?
No more citizens' comments.
Okay, great. In that case, tonight's meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.